And good evening, and thank you for coming to the For the Life of Your License, for the launch of your career, for the Life of Your License presentation by the American Association of Veterinary State Boards, or AAVSB. My name is Josh Weinstock. I am the Marketing Communications Specialist for the AAVSB. I'm going to briefly tell you a little bit about who we are. The American Association of Veterinary State Boards is a 501c3 nonprofit corporation headquartered in Kansas City, Missouri. We are an association of veterinary medicine regulatory boards whose membership includes licensing bodies in all of the United States and Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, D.C., and 9 Canadian provinces. Our mission is to support and advance the regulatory process for veterinary medicine. So our members are the regulators that you guys will get licensed by after you graduate from veterinary school. I'm going to give you a little introduction to the webinar platform we're using today. It's called ReadyTalk. If at any time during the presentation you want to send in a question, just hover your mouse over your screen and you'll see a little blue chat button at the bottom left corner of your screen, a little cloud. You can send us a question at any time, and after the presentation, I will give those questions to our presenter. Our presenter today is Ms. Leslie Knockle. She is the Executive Director of the Virginia Board of Veterinary Medicine and also the Chair of the AAVSB Student Outreach Task Force. One of the priorities that the AAVSB has identified over the last couple of years is outreach to students like yourselves, and Leslie is the chair of the task force that is looking into that and doing our best to connect with you guys so you guys can understand licensure before you jump into that process. Leslie Knockle has also been on the AAVSB Board of Directors and served on several other committees with the AAVSB. So go ahead and send in your questions whenever you like, and we'll present those questions to Leslie at the end. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Knockle to talk about licensure for veterinary students. And I don't hear Leslie, so double check and make sure your phone is unmuted. I'm still not hearing you, Leslie.
Can you hear me now?
There we go. There we go. You're good. Go ahead.
Okay, good. Sorry. Thank you, Josh, for that introduction. As Josh mentioned, I'm the Executive Director for the Virginia Board of Veterinary Medicine, and this presentation today is not board specific for any particular state board or Canadian province. However, it's got general information that will be helpful to you as you move through your licensure process. Most of the state boards operate very similar. So as a student in veterinary college, you each may have different views of what class was the most difficult or most confusing to you. If you don't understand the licensure process, it can be just as confusing. So I'm here today to help you better understand how to navigate through the licensure process and to support you through the rest of your career. I often tell students when I do this presentation at the Virginia Tech School of Veterinary Medicine that you're with your school for 4 years, but you're typically with a licensure board for about 40 years. So it's important that you know and understand the licensure process. The goals for today is to paint a picture of the overall licensure process, discuss licensure, and answer any questions that you might have. When you apply for a license, your board looks for 2 things. Do you have the special knowledge and skills to practice? And once licensed, are you maintaining your competency and ethical requirements? Your first experience with the licensure process will most likely be your externship or preceptorship. A key piece to this experience is that you work under the supervision of a licensed veterinarian while you're still a student. This ensures that the public is protected when you begin your practice. Many of you are most likely familiar with your professional association, the AVMA. However, you may be unaware of the association that can help you best navigate the licensure process and support you throughout your career. The American Association of Veterinary State Boards, or AAVSB, is an organization whose members are the states, U.S. territories, and Canadian provinces that regulate veterinary medicine. We are also there to support you as a professional as you navigate the licensure process throughout your career. The AAVSB can serve as a great resource for you as you make your way through your career. The career journey seen here is typical of a veterinary medicine professional. You are currently in school, which is a perfect time to start thinking about the next steps to get you where you want to go. The association houses a licensure database that includes all licensed veterinary medicine professionals, including veterinarians and veterinary technicians. So a great step to do now is to start your career record with the AAVSB. It's the first step in receiving services that benefit you for the life of your license. Your My AAVSB career record starts with a simple application found on the AAVSB website. Not only will this record benefit you when you seek a new license, but it also serves as an insurance policy for your career information that you will need to submit as part of your application whenever you want to get licensed in another state, as well as tracking and reporting your continuing education. And I do want to stress here that the ability to store your continuing education information in one central location is extremely helpful. Most of the state boards do an audit of some sort on the CE. Some of them do it every year, some of them do it randomly. But if you have the information stored in one location, you don't have to go around and try to collect it at some point in time. And I've heard all kinds of excuses from people. I haven't gotten the one about the dog ate my CE certificate, but I have gotten a lot of issues where there was a flood, something was destroyed, or we moved and it's in a box somewhere and I don't know where it is. So this is a really good opportunity for you to store that continuing education in an easily retrievable location. Next up is your national examination. Most states allow you to take the NAVLE when you are about 6 months, about 6 months away from graduating from your veterinary medicine program. There's a third association that owns and delivers the NAVLE that is used by all states to determine your qualifications for initial licensure. The International Council for Veterinary Assessment, formerly the National Board of Veterinary Medical Examiners, is a separate organization that develops and owns the North American Veterinary Licensing Examination, or what you probably know as the NAVLE. The NAVLE is used by veterinary regulatory boards as the credentialing examination and is required for licensure. Qualifications to sit for the NAVLE can be found on the ICVA website. The regulatory boards are typically comprised of veterinarians, veterinary technicians, and lay members appointed by the government. Each state or province has its own licensure laws and regulates practice within the jurisdiction boundaries. The regulatory boards are also responsible for protecting the public by ensuring that licensees practice with skill and safety. There may be different requirements depending on which state you wish to obtain your initial licensure. The AAVSB assists its member regulatory boards in setting model standards for veterinary medicine, providing professional development for the members of each state or provincial regulatory board, and providing services for boards that also benefit the profession, such as approving continuing education providers through the RACE program, providing a comprehensive database of licensed practitioners, and developing the examination to qualify veterinary technicians. The AAVSB also provides you services for the life of your license, such as helping you collect and transfer your transcripts and credentials for licensure, as well as tracking and reporting your continuing education to your regulatory board. The AAVSB also owns the National Examination for Veterinary Technicians, referred to as the VTNE, which is the Veterinary Technician National Examination. As students, the AAVSB strives to provide you information about the regulatory process and the way their team of licensure experts can help you navigate the regulatory waters. The next step on your career journey is licensure. During the NAVLE application process, you are required to indicate the state where you want to get initially licensed. Many students are unsure of where they will ultimately land a job and select their home state or the state where they're going to school for their initial license. The AAVSB is there to help you out and transfer your credentials through your career through your career record should you actually find a job in a state other than the one you selected when you take the NAVLE. To get licensed in another province, you'll need to complete a license application with the state or province. Many states and provinces also have a jurisprudence examination. Josh, can you advance the slide one, please? Oh, there you got it. Thank you. So, as I said, many states and provinces also have a jurisprudence examination. In most cases, this exam does not contain clinical questions, but rather ensures that you understand the laws in the jurisdiction where you gain your license to practice. If you need to, depending on the state, you need to find out if there is that jurisprudence exam, because sometimes that examination is not offered on a regular basis. It depends on how the state administers that examination, and sometimes the AAVSB helps with administration of that. The AAVSB can also help you with this process through our Vault Transfer for first-time license application services. This Vault Transfer service is perfect for veterinary professionals and students who have taken the national examination but have never been licensed in any jurisdiction. In the event that the state you selected upon taking your national exam is not the state in which you ultimately need to get licensed, simply complete the appropriate application based on the exam you took, and the AAVSB will send your exam score to the jurisdiction you indicate. It's important to go to the aavsb.org to look up the application requirements for the state where you wish to be licensed, as it is important to understand that each state and province has different laws and requirements. Our website provides links to each of the state and provincial websites to find these requirements and the license applications. The primary mission of every licensing board must focus on public protection, not on serving the interests of the occupational or professional group. Licensure boards establish qualifications or requirements for licensure, including license renewal, education, examination, character, and continuing education. They regulate over 97,000 licensed veterinarians in the United States and Canada. Licensing bodies respond to complaints from consumers and the profession regarding a veterinarian's competency, standard of care, and professional conduct. Regulation is a government-directed activity. Every state and province has similar but different laws, statutes, and regulations. However, they are all in place to do one thing: protect the public. Regulators ensure those entering the veterinary profession meet a minimum standard of practice by being properly educated, qualified, and are fit to be licensed. This includes both initial licensure after graduating from an accredited program or a program approved by the regulatory board, and by ensuring they receive adequate continuing education throughout their careers. Regulators often set forth policies on how clinics and hospitals should be established. They also investigate complaints against veterinarians and veterinary technicians or facilities. The regulation of veterinary medicine is defined through the legislative process through the creation of a statute or law that defines the practice of veterinary medicine. Each state has a regulatory board that is typically composed of a number of professionals with the expertise to determine if a licensed professional is practicing competently within the law, and also one or more public members who are not veterinarians or technicians but represent the viewpoint of the consumer. Regulatory boards are given the authority to promulgate rules, approve licensure applications, and respond to consumer complaints against a licensed professional. The statute is the law of the state and grants authority to the board to make regulations to implement the law. Statute can only be changed through the legislative process. The regulations are administrative law. The development and passage of regulations is called the promulgation process. The promulgation process is the method for approving regulation and allows the public to participate by commenting on proposed regulations. The process can take 2 or more years to complete, depending on how each individual state operates. Regulations provide details about how the law will be carried out. Licensees of each state are responsible for knowing and complying with all applicable laws and regulations of the state where they are practicing. I often tell the students that I make presentations to that in Virginia we don't accept "but I didn't know," because when you sign the application for licensure, you are indicating that you have read and understand the regulations. A guidance document is defined as any document developed by a state agency or staff that provides information or guidance of general applicability to the staff or public to interpret or implement statutes of the agency's rules or regulations. Not all states have guidance documents, and guidance documents are not laws or regulations and are not enforceable as such. But I know in Virginia we often use them. We have a lot of different guidance documents, one specifically about controlled substances and veterinary practices, and that information is very helpful to veterinarians in regards to their authority to prescribe and the information that they need about inventorying and properly storing their scheduled drugs. You should become familiar with the guidance documents if available in the state where you practice to understand the board's view on commonly asked questions or areas needing clarification. With your license in hand, you can now start your first job as a veterinarian. To maintain your license, each state has standards for you to maintain your competence and requires that you demonstrate that you've completed the requirements each time you renew your license. This is typically established by completing a specific number of hours in continuing education every 1 to 3 years, or often as the state requires you to renew your license. The AAVSB established the RACE program, or the Registry of Approved Continuing Education, to ensure that you know which courses will be acceptable for your state for licensure renewal. And please understand that not all CE is the same from state to state, and if you have, like in my case in Virginia, we often have people that are licensed in North Carolina and Virginia, or Maryland, D.C. and Virginia. You do have to know and understand what the CE requirements are for each of the jurisdictions in which you have a license. The RACE service has been a staple of the AAVSB services since 1998. The goal of the service is to ensure that all RACE-approved programs meet appropriate standards of quality CE. All states but one require continuing education for renewal of your license. The RACE service approves programs for veterinary continuing education that are automatically accepted in most cases towards your renewal requirements. You can search for programs to attend through the AAVSB website. The AAVSB also offers a free service so that you can track your continuing education and have a record to demonstrate that you have met each state's requirements when you renew your license. The CE tracking service allows online access for you to submit, track, and report your continuing education. You can transmit your CE credits in a uniform manner to any of the AAVSB member boards. One of the main activities of the regulatory boards is to investigate complaints. Understanding the statutes and the regulations in each state where you practice is important in avoiding disciplinary actions. An incoming complaint begins the disciplinary process. Any person may make a complaint. Some complaints are anonymous. Some states don't accept anonymous. It depends on the state. But most can't be anonymous because we need to look at medical records and to do a thorough investigation. The type of complaint determines how the investigation proceeds. Generally, the licensee receives a copy of the complaint and is asked to provide a response. Typically, the contents of the investigation file are not available to the complainant. Once a case has been investigated, it is sent to the board to determine if there are any violations of applicable laws and regulations. This is typically called the probable cause review stage. Cases are reviewed by a minimum of one board member to determine the next step. A licensee has the right to seek legal counsel at any stage of the disciplinary process. All costs of personal legal representation are borne by the licensee. Certain decisions of the board are public information and could remain on the public website for the life of your license. Generally, however, public disciplinary action permanently remains attached to the license regardless of its status. So even if your license is expired in one state and you go to get licensed in another state, that disciplinary action will follow you to the other state. According to a 2017 survey performed by the AAVSB, the top reasons for disciplinary action against a licensee are improper record keeping, negligence or malpractice, unprofessional conduct, a violation of narcotic or prescription regulations or substance abuse, practicing without a license, and failure to complete the required continuing education. Improper record keeping was the most frequent reason for disciplinary action as revealed by the AAVSB survey to its member boards. You may be asked to present your medical records as part of an inquiry by a board into a consumer complaint, or many states have a facility license where an inspector will ask to see the medical records of the practice during the inspection. During an establishment inspection, the inspector will review several records to ensure compliance with the record-keeping requirements. X-rays are considered part of the record and must be made available for review as requested. When referring to prescription drugs, you will hear the terms schedule, class, and controlled substance used interchangeably. Drug violations are commonly cited during inspections as a result of expired drugs found in working stock, unlicensed personnel handling Schedule II through V drugs, drugs not properly secured, biennial drug inventory not taken at the 2-year required interval. Biennial drug inventory does not include or does not indicate if taken at opening or closing of business, and original invoices not maintained in chronological order and not dated with actual date of receipt. I have to say, in Virginia, where we have inspections about every 3 years of our veterinary establishment, the controlled substances are the ones that are cited, or violations related to controlled substances are the ones that are cited the most often. It is important that controlled substances be properly secured to prevent diversion. By keeping your career record up to date with the AAVSB, you will also find it easier to get licensed in a new state if you move or if you take on clients outside of your home state. The AAVSB maintains your career credentials so that you can easily request that your file be sent in support of a new licensure application. Our world is no longer stationary. The Association's Licensure Assistance Services makes it easy for your professional history to follow you for the life of your license. If you move to another jurisdiction, you will utilize us at the AAVSB for transferring your career record. Sometimes information is lost and can't be reproduced. We provide a secure database to ensure your licensure history. The AAVSB brings together licensees, regulatory boards, and the public in a unique way. Through its professional services like test scores and credentials transfers to continuing education tracking and verification services for boards, the AAVSB is continually looking for avenues to make the licensure process efficient and effective for all of us. AAVSB is dedicated to helping you have a great licensing experience so that you can in turn have a great career. Of course, we are on social media. Please visit a section of our website devoted specifically to you. And I think, yeah, one more slide. Josh, there you go. That's the information for the social media. And that concludes our presentation. If anybody has any questions, we'll be happy to answer them at this point.
Thanks, Leslie. So I've already seen quite a few questions coming in. Just a reminder, if you haven't already sent one in, hover your mouse over your screen, and you should see a blue chat cloud in the bottom left corner of your screen. You can send in a question that way. I'm also going to bring another voice onto the line if need be. Lainey Franklin, the AAVSB Member Services and Marketing Specialist, is on the call today. She is the staff liaison for the Student Outreach Task Force, and she has a lot of knowledge about the AAVSB services and how they can help students. So she may answer a question, and Leslie may answer a question, and I might answer one. We've got quite a few coming in here. First one, I'm going to direct this to Leslie. Can you hold a license to practice in 2 or more states at the same time?
Absolutely. As I mentioned, in our area where we have the D.C., Maryland area, so close to Virginia with a very dense population up there, many of those people have multiple licenses, and some of them have mobile veterinary establishment. We register veterinary establishments. They have registration so that they can come into Virginia and they can practice. But you will need, if you're going typically into another state to practice, you will need a license. There are some variations on that. If you're consulting, you may not need one, but again, you need to read the specific laws and regulations of any of the states in which you want to practice.
Thanks, Leslie. I'm just making sure I take record of all these questions. Next one. Should we be on the AAVSB website now, or is this a site we should join after we take the NAVLE? So I think that question is asking, do you guys, students, need to sign in and make your My AAVSB account now, or is it something you should do after you take the NAVLE? I think I can answer that, and the answer is you can create your My AAVSB account now. In fact, you should, because it's good to have your record going with us now, and you can then log in later and use your credentials to do any of those services that Leslie talked about in the licensure assistance. Lainey, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, thanks, Josh. I would just add to that definitely set up that account, but do so with your personal email versus a school email, because you might run into a situation where once you take the NAVLE and you graduate from school, that school email is not valid anymore. So it is best to use a personal email, and obviously we can help change the email that you've signed in with later if need be.
Great. Thanks, Lainey. I'm going to direct this next question to Leslie. Are questions on state-specific boards, such as California State Board, similar to the NAVLE, or are they focused on more state-specific things?
I believe what they're referring to is this jurisprudence exam or the state examination, and those are going to not be questions like the NAVLE. They're not going to be asking you questions about your standard of care. They're going to be asking you questions about the laws and regulations for practicing in that particular state. So it's important that you have read the laws and regulations and that you understand what your responsibility is in that particular state. Virginia does not have a jurisprudence exam. We did away with it back in the 1990s, but there are a number of states, and Lainey may know how many states currently are doing the jurisprudence. I'm not absolutely sure if we've been tracking that at the AAVSB or not.
And I apologize, I don't know that number off the top of my head, but I'll break in here in just a few minutes and I'll let you know. And with the AABSB, we do administer some of those jurisprudence exams. Wisconsin, for example, I believe Josh is at South Carolina, and we are in the process of getting ready to administer Arkansas as well.
I think it might be North Carolina. I'm not sure.
This may not be a question, Josh, but I'd like to share with the students that it's really important that you understand how long it's going to take to get a license in the state in which you're seeking licensure. In Virginia, we have a situation where you can apply as soon as you want to after you've taken the NAVLE and understand that and seen your scores and seen that you've passed, and then you're in a queue. So when we can get your transcripts, you can get licensed very quickly. Not all states operate the same way in that. Some have to wait until the board meets in order to issue. In Virginia, the staff has been delegated authority to issue the license on behalf of the board if everything is in place that meets the regulations. There are certain conditions under which I have to reach out to a board member, such as if there had been some criminal activity that was reported on the application, which doesn't necessarily mean you're not going to be able to get a license. It just means that it has to go through another level of review. So non-routine applications are referred to a board member, and that may take a little bit longer to license. But fortunately in Virginia, for me, and that's my frame of reference, is that if the application is complete, we can issue the license typically within 24 hours. There are other situations where some boards, they have to meet to issue the licenses, and they only meet every 3 to 4 months. So do keep that in mind, that you understand what the requirement is for the state in which you're seeking licensure.
Thanks, Leslie. I got to find my spot. We've got lots of questions coming in, which is very good. Keep sending them. We'll try to get to as many as we can.
Josh, while you're looking through those, I can tell you that approximately 40 licensed boards require a jurisprudence exam. And it does depend state by state as to whether that is an online exam and whether it's open book or whether it's paper pencil that you have to appear in person for. So again, this is just a good reminder to make sure that you check the AABSB website for locating your specific board's requirements for licensure, because that's where you'll find it.
Okay, great. Will we have access to this PowerPoint afterwards? There's already been a lot of information presented, but we're not going to be able to remember it all. The answer is yes. We are recording this webinar, and Lainey will get that to the SAVMA representative, Shefali, and she will be able to distribute that. I'm applying for licensure in New York and am required to send some forms and a check to the New York Education Department. Should these be sent before the NAVLE and before graduating? It looks like the forms are meant to verify that I've completed the program. I'm going to direct that to Leslie.
So I usually recommend that people apply somewhere like around March before graduation. I don't know how New York operates, but the best thing to do is to make sure that you've passed the NAVLE, and then you can send an application in. In Virginia, we only keep the application for a year, and then it's destroyed, and you would have to reapply with the fee. So you may not want to do that if you have not passed the NAVLE, such as what's happening right now. This was completely unpredicted. The COVID has prevented the ability for some people to retake the exam if they didn't pass it in December, and they don't know exactly when they are going to take it. So if that was delayed, it could be problematic in that if it was delayed a full year because they hadn't passed it the second time, etc., then they might have to reapply. So I would recommend waiting until you know that you've passed the NAVLE, and then you can reach out to the state boards and find out if you can go ahead and send in the application. We accept them in Virginia. We have a filing system. We just hold on to them until we get your transcripts. Now, I do caution people about transcripts, especially now. There were a lot of people, they finished up early because of the COVID situation and they were sent home, is don't send the transcript until the degree is conferred on the transcripts. It's no good to the boards to look at a transcript where the degree has not been conferred. So it typically has to be, you have to wait until after the actual graduation, and then shortly thereafter the transcripts are produced by the school and sent to the board. Many of the boards are now accepting electronic transfer of the transcripts. It's usually done through a third party from the school. So if your school sends it electronically, find out if the board will accept it and then have it sent. It's much faster than having it mailed to the board.
Okay, thanks, Leslie. We went over this one earlier, but I'll just say it again just to make sure everyone gets the answer. Can a veterinarian have licenses in 2 different states at a time? And the answer is yes. In fact, some of the veterinarians that utilize our vault services are licensed in dozens of states. It's actually quite insane, some of them. I think there's one that's licensed in like 30 states. So, yes, you can definitely have a license in more than one state. Leslie, how does the licensure payment process work?
So different states operate, again, differently. In Virginia, we have a system where a new graduate can apply online, pay with a credit card. There are, and renewal is done online with a credit card. You're issued a PIN number and an account, and you can do a password, and each time you can just go in and renew. We send out our renewal notices via email, and our renewals are by December 31st of each year. And so the payment processes are different, but typically the instructions for the application will include how to send it. So some people don't have a credit card, so they do send us in a check, and the check has to be made out to the Treasurer of Virginia, and then it has to be a check or a money order. We do not accept cash. You can't walk into our building and hand over cash for us to apply for a license.
Thank you, Leslie. I'm going to read this message here. Lainey just wanted to remind everyone, once licensed, make sure and keep your email address up to date with your licensing board. That is how most of them will communicate with you, is through email. So make sure you got the right email address.
I can't stress that enough. Thank you, Lainey, for bringing that up. We got to have current email addresses, and be sure when you enter it, if you have an online application, that you enter it correctly. In Virginia, not only do I send out e-renewal notifications, but I also send out mass emails for important information such as regulatory changes. I post them on the board's website, but that email that goes out, I try to use it very sparingly so that when you get one from the Virginia board, that you know it's an important piece of information.
Great, thanks. I'll answer this one. When and how do you become a member of AAVSB? So just a little clarification, the AAVSB's members are actually the state licensing boards. So you won't be a member of the AAVSB as a student, and you won't be a member once you get your license. You'd only be a member if you were sitting on a licensing board. So we assist the licensing boards in their business of public protection. The follow-up question, can we start our account as a student, third-year student, or should we wait until the 4th year? You can start your My AAVSB account right now. And again, you're not joining the AAVSB. You're creating your account because we are your partner throughout the life of your license. So you can do that right now, even before you have a license. Let me go to the next one. If I move states and I've paid for a license in one state that will expire next year, is there a financial transfer?
No. Each state's fee is for each state's license. There is no transfer.
Thank you. And Lainey, again, just wanted to remind everyone that what you'll want to do now as a student is go to aavsb.org/student services. That's where you're going to find the services that are pertinent to you right now. How are veterinarians who practice telemedicine able to practice in so many different states at once? I'll direct that to Leslie.
They usually will have to have a license in each of the states in which they practice unless there's some exemption that the state might have. So in Virginia, if you want to do telepractice in Virginia, you need to have a license, and that's in our statute that a license is required to do anything that constitutes the practice of veterinary medicine. Many of the veterinarians consult with other veterinarians, and in Virginia there's a specific exemption that consulting veterinarian does not need to be licensed in Virginia, but they need to be working in consultation with a licensed veterinarian in Virginia. So typically the consultant would maybe read some radiographs, or they might read something related to a cardiac information, and then feed that to the veterinarian in Virginia, and then the Virginia veterinarian would then implement the treatment plan. So it's a consultation process for that. But if they are actually treating the animal through telemedicine, then most states that I'm aware of would require you to have a license in that state.
Great, thank you. If you decide to get licensed in 2 or more states, what do you need to do to maintain it? Is there an annual fee or an annual exam?
So licenses, if you have 2 licenses in 2 different states, so let's take Virginia and North Carolina. We have different CE requirements. You have to maintain the different CE requirements. Some of it will be overlapping, but we may have 15 hours in Virginia. North Carolina might have 20 hours. So you have to know what those requirements are. You have to know what the expiration date of your license is if you want to practice in that other state. And you have to pay the fee, the renewal fee, and every state has a renewal fee that you would have to pay every year by the expiration date. Some states are on an annual renewal, and there are some on every 2 years. I'm not sure that anybody has anything longer than that. Lainey might know if there's anybody who has like a 3-year renewal process.
Yeah, there are a couple of boards that have a 3-year process, but I agree the majority of them are 1 or 2.
Okay, thank you. Are there scenarios in which you're allowed to work under someone else's license? For example, you're licensed in New York but want to volunteer for a spay or neuter clinic in New Jersey.
I'm going to answer that with it depends. We do have volunteer opportunities. There's also declarations of state emergency. So if we had some sort of flooding issue in Virginia and veterinarians need to come in to help the animals, there's different scenarios. I think that's very specific to the situation. You do need to look at the laws and regulations to find out if there's any opportunity to come in to volunteer without having a license. A lot of times that is related to underserved areas, not just to come in to practice for a period of time, but to do it as a voluntary basis. But again, I would recommend that you specifically reach out to the board or look at the regulations related to that if you want to go in to volunteer into another state. In Virginia, volunteering is still practicing veterinary medicine, and they would have to meet the requirements that we have for the volunteer piece or a declaration of emergency that's issued by the governor.
Thank you. This one's for Leslie. How do online veterinary services work with licensing, i.e. companies and apps that let veterinarians answer non-urgent client questions about their pet?
Okay, so that's a question that if somebody were to send me an email and I would respond that I'm not able to provide legal advice and I'm not able to interpret the laws and regulations governing the practice of veterinary medicine in Virginia. However, I hope the information provided below is helpful. and I would provide them with the specific laws and regulations in Virginia. I think that issue is evolving, and it's evolving very quickly, especially given the fact that we've been homebound now. We're just starting to open back up because of COVID-19. So I think these issues related to that type of practice will evolve over time, but be sure that you know and understand what the specific state's requirements are. But I would not be able to say this is how it works because I don't know the specific scenario, and that would be very scenario specific.
Okay. I'm going to direct this question to Lainey. I'm trying to create my AAVSB account, but it says new to AAVSB, question mark. Your account will be created when you complete your service application. What does that mean, service application?
Okay, so the service application is if you are going to apply to have a service with us. But let me just do a couple of things here, and I'm just going to follow along and see if I can get that same message here. Let's see, future use as a veterinarian. So let's see here. Okay, so I'm going to create an account, and so I would enter my email address. And let's see here. Okay, so from the Student Services page, what I did was I clicked on the button that told me, or excuse me, let me get back to that page here real quick. Okay, from the Student Services page, I clicked on Preparing for a Veterinary Career, and then if you scroll down and create a My AAVSB account for future use as a veterinarian, it will walk you through the steps. So if the person did that and got that message, please let me know, and put it in the chat box or whatever, and we'll figure that one out for you.
Okay, thank you. Is the jurisprudence exam taken with the NAVLE?
No.
Wait, sorry, I didn't read the whole thing. Okay, is it taken at the same time as the NAVLE? I think it's what this person is saying. Is it taken at the same time as the NAVLE based on the state you selected in your application, or is it taken at a later date?
As far as I know, and Lainey might need to confirm this, as far as I know, there is no other exam that's administered with the NAVLE. It would be something that's taken separately.
That is my understanding as well.
Yeah, it's a totally separate thing, not really affiliated with the NAVLE.
And I would add to that again, check those the state website, because sometimes that exam can be taken early before the license, and I think most of the time it's as the license is being issued. But definitely check that. But those are typically issued or administered by the state, unless the AAVSB is administering it on behalf of the state.
Yeah, some states wait until they make sure that you're qualified as an applicant, and then they assign a date for you to take that jurisprudence exam.
Great, thank you. We've got a few more minutes left. We'll get to as many questions as we can. Go ahead and keep sending them into the chat, and we promise we will not keep you beyond the 1 hour time slot that we had for you. If you were licensed in one, oh, I think I skipped one. Hang on. If you are licensed in one, oh, we already did that. Okay. I have lost my spot.
Hey, Josh, while you're doing that, I can say that if we don't get to all the questions today, we can definitely get the answer for you, and we can respond back with the email that you registered with. I would certainly be happy to give answers to Shefali as well, and she can send those out. So we'll definitely make sure that you get the answers.
Thanks, Lainey. Okay, I found my spot. Can you keep a license for a particular state even if you are not actively practicing in that state at that time? I'll address that to Leslie.
As far as I know, there isn't any states that prohibit you from keeping the license even not practicing. In Virginia, we do not ask if you've been practicing or not. It's up to you to determine whether you want to keep the license active. We do have an inactive status, and many people opt to do that. Let's say they're in the military and they may go out to California for a while, but they know they're going to come back to Virginia. They'll keep it inactive. It's a lower renewal fee, and you don't have to do CE while you are in an inactive status. But when you reactivate, you will have to prove that you've got some CE, and there's some requirements. It's not as much CE as like if you had it inactive for 10 years that you'd have to do all the CE for 10 years. In Virginia, it would just be for no more than 2 years.
Thanks. I will try to answer this. Might need some help from Lainey. The question is, can the AAVSB help non-U.S. citizens from AVMA accredited vet schools get a license? So we have a program called PAVE, which is the Program for the Assessment of Veterinary Education Equivalents, that helps veterinary graduates of non-AVMA accredited schools get a license. So if you are AVMA accredited, and if I'm reading your question right, you shouldn't have a problem, but if it's a non-AVMA accredited school, then you would want to look into our PAVE program, which is on our site under Licensure Assistance International Pathway. What that does is an extra step where we would evaluate your education equivalence on behalf of the member board where you want to get licensed. So if you went to school overseas and then you wanted to come back here and get licensed in Kansas or Missouri or whatever, we would verify that your education at a non-accredited school was equivalent to what you would have got here at an accredited school. But if it's an AVMA accredited vet school, then if it's outside the U.S., I don't think it matters. Lainey and Leslie, you both are welcome to add to that. Lainey just said correct.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. I was unmuted my phone and then muted it.
Okay. Is the state board exam synonymous with the jurisprudence exam? And again, I think I should be able to answer that. Jurisprudence refers to state law, and I think we said earlier, as far as we know, there aren't any state exams that are not that, like another medical exam. You take the NAVLE for the medical side and the jurisprudence for the state law side. I think we've already discussed costs. Is there any cost associated with obtaining, maintaining a license in each state? Yes, you're going to have to apply. There's a fee for that in each state. It's different in every state. We've kind of discussed that. Here's a question for Leslie. I assume you'd need to go through the state license process for the state you get placed into for internship. Is that correct?
That's going to be dependent upon where you're doing the internship. So until recently, and this has been in the last couple of years, the Virginia Tech School of Veterinary Medicine had interns there, and they were not required to be licensed because they were a state employee. That changed a couple of years ago, and now they do have to have license, and it's an intern resident license. The faculty are also licensed now. They were not before because their clinic takes in animals from the community, so they needed to be licensed. It depends on, again, whether the state, if you do it, the internship at a college, of veterinary medicine, they may or may not have licensure for the schools, if it's a state school. So you really have to check to find out. But if you're going into a private practice, typically you will need to have, if you've graduated, you will need to have a license to practice. And I tell people in Virginia, submission of an application is not adequate to begin practice. So you do need to have your license in Virginia in order to go into a private practice and do an internship. Now, not all states may be exactly the same there, so you will have to check that out with the particular state where you're going to be doing the internship.
Great, thank you. We've got just a couple more minutes. We do have some comments. Someone asked, does California have a separate state medical exam and a state law exam? And one person thinks they do. Lainey, are you familiar? Does California have a medical exam outside of the NAVLE?
Let me take a quick look here. Let me open up the document that I need, and I can get that information for you right away. And let's see here.
Approval to take the NAVLE has to come from California. It's the only state where the state approves the NAVLE, I believe. Correct, Lainey?
Let's see. We do review eligibility to take the NAVLE on
Correct.
behalf of California. So now, was the question also about a jurisprudence exam? Was that correct?
Well, if there's another medical exam in California, in addition to the jurisprudence.
Oh, okay. Yes, in California, you would take the NAVLE just like in the other states. And then I'm looking here to see whether or not there is a jurisprudence exam in California. And
as far as I know, there is. I'm pretty sure there is.
Yeah. So let's see here. I just need to scroll over in my chart here. And yes, there is a jurisprudence exam in California.
So the question was, do they have an additional state medical exam outside of the NAVLE? So a state medical exam and the state law exam.
No, it's not an additional medical exam. You would take the NAVLE, and then you would also complete their jurisprudence exam.
Okay. And like we said before, it's wherever you want to get licensed, you can look up the state board website on our website under public resources, and you can confirm what your requirements are in that state. We'll do one more question real quick. What is the cost for the vault program and transfer of NAVLE scores to get licensed in a new state? I can look that up for you right now. So if you, it depends on which service. So we have a couple of vault services. If you weren't yet licensed, you would do the vault transfer for first-time license application. And that would be, you took the NAVLE, you put the state of Kansas on there, but then you realize, actually, I'm going to get licensed in Missouri, and I need to transfer my score. So if you did that, it's a $50 fee. But if you did it later, after you've been licensed in your career, it would just kind of depend on what service you did. If you did a Vault Basic service for veterinarians, which is just the score transfer, that is a $90 fee. But if you did the Vault Premium, where we handle your license verifications, your DVM transcripts, your identity documents, we do all that for you. The pricing just kind of depends on some factors, whether your school charges for the transcript, whether your state charges for the license verification, and that's all on our website. You can do a little pricing calculator there. We're at 6:31, so we've gone over our hour. I will let Leslie and Lainey let me know if they have any last thoughts they want to get out.
I just would like to say that y'all asked a lot of great questions, so it's really appreciated. And as a licensing board, I appreciate questions when the students ask them, because licensure is so very important, and it has been lacking in the information to the schools. And we've really made a concerted effort in the recent years to make sure that the students know what the licensure process is. So thank you for attending, and thank you for your questions.
Yeah, and I would just
Okay,
add we hope to see you at SAVMA 2021.
Great. Thank you, Lainey and Leslie, and thank you to all the students that joined today. We had at one point over 100 attendees, so thank you to Shefali for getting the word out to all her fellow students. And with that, I will wish you all a good night and be safe. Thank you. We'll send out the recording.